Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. And the comments are completely irrelevant, frankly. And we got to do something about it because it's just a waste of time, I suppose. And it's all just so dishonest. You know, the thumbing up of their, it's just troll accounts, blah blah blah. Probably just one troll entertaining himself, but anyway. So I should just auto block all the accounts that are less than a month old, and I keep saying I should do it, and I just don't do it. Because something's better than nothing in terms of a counter argument, I suppose. But it really is a waste of time, I think, because these aren't really issues. So I keep putting the questions, the paradoxes, in the description of the video, so they're in the description of every one of the videos, and those are what I'd like answered. These people who want to pretend this isn't a controversy, yeah, it is, in the sense that back in the days when intelligent people didn't like theories that had holes in them and didn't make sense and were incomplete. Back in the day when smart people were actually smart, they weren't just pretentious douchebags. You had to do real science. You couldn't do all this fake, we just believe it crap. So, just as to further, pile on the already extensive evidence of their lack of evidence, the fact that they have zero physical evidence for the existence of kinetic energy. They have no experiment demonstrating the collection of this extra energy. They never prove that the gun shoots 2,000 joules this way and only 4 joules that way. They never explain it. It's a physical fact. They're saying this is what happens. The universe is imposed upon the universe that 2,000 joules will go out that way with the bullet, and only 4 joules, 3, go that way with the gun barrel. That's their theory of how the universe works, and they won't give us anything to demonstrate that's the truth. They won't show us the bullet doing 2,000 joules worth of work. They won't show us, like I said, we cut the velocities in half, we could cut them in a quarter, we could cut them in an eighth. We keep cutting them. They never show us the 8-pound bowling ball going twice as fast as the 16-pound ball, knocking down twice as many pins. We'll never see any experimental evidence. Now, I've cited that they can make clay experiments look like something. And guess what? I'm making a mistake by even citing clay experiments, because clay experiments don't prove 1/2 mv squared. Clay experiments prove mv squared. Okay, so a number twice is silly. So the only experiment in the historical record, okay, the clay experiments that convinced all the French people, they don't prove 1/2 mv squared. They prove mv squared. So it's not even evidence in support of 1/2 mv squared. Clay experiments don't even support it. So they don't even have clay experiments. All right. And they're talking to me as if I need an education, as if I need to change my attitude, because they have zero evidence. They've presented zero evidence. Their theory breaks all of Newton's laws, essentially. Then they lie about it and say somehow it's Newton's physics, which is just a gross lie. I mean, it's a terrible slander against Newton to say mv squared is his idea, or that it's somehow hidden in his mathematics when it's not. I can show, I would prefer probably to do the Professor Lewin video on rockets, where all he talks about is momentum, really. Okay, and then he throws kinetic energy in right at the end. But all of the mechanics is momentum. And that's what Newton talked about. Well, anyway. So, I mean, it's just so obviously this is not very good science that they're defending. And they're defending it in this obnoxious way, like they have all the right answers and all the evidence on their side, and they can present zero evidence. Nothing. All right, so let's play with this. I mean, let's read the crap and go through it again. All right, so you don't seem to get the equal and opposite reaction thing. Yeah, I do. And my argument to you is you're not getting it. Okay, so when Professor Lewin says things like, okay, well this, okay, vector acts on this object, and that creates a force in this direction. And then there's a counter force in this direction. This feels a counter force. No, it doesn't. This gave this to this. That means this went away, which means that inside of this, okay, there was an imbalance in this direction. It had $10 more going that way than if it was money. Okay, if it was right and left money, it had more right than left. So it was going right. And then it gave away the extra right. So it doesn't have it anymore. So now it has a balance. It has $10 of right and $10 of left. See, it had an extra $10 of left, or right. So therefore, when it gave that away, it didn't need any counter force to act on it. Now, this never happened. It gave this away. Now, in the case where you're throwing a rubber ball against a wall, well, then there is an equal and opposite reaction in a sense, in that the rubber ball is basically got a spring built into it. You know, it compresses, it changes shape, and then it goes back to its original shape, and so there's an extra force involved. But this, so Newton's impression, okay, is an impression. It's the 1600s, for fuck's sake. They weren't even close to getting to a light bulb yet. So, I mean, the fact that Newton drew the conclusion that there's some sort of opposite, thing, there's no opposite thing. If you give away what you have, then you change your balance. If I tear my arm off and throw it and give it to somebody, I don't have an arm. I don't need a force to cut my arm off. I already don't have the arm. So, that's the argument I'm making. We already have a disposition. We already have a defined description of what we contain. And if I give away a piece of it, that means some other piece is now going to imbalance me in that direction. So I don't, if I give away right, I'm going to have left inside of me, and now I'm going to go left. I don't need a force to make it happen. That's what I've explained. Okay. All right, you don't seem to get the equal and opposite reaction thing. It's like double entry bookkeeping. So people don't even get that either. There's no double entry bookkeeping. You either make a deposit, okay, and if you make a deposit, then you don't have the money in your hands anymore. Anyway, to keep in line with your analogy. So my analogy is that if I give something away, I don't have it anymore, and that's changed me. That's the argument. I don't need something to act on me to change me. I already changed me by giving something away. All right. It has money, B has none. Okay, A has money, B has none. A gives money to B. Yes, that's the only action there is. That's the end of the actions. Actions have now ended. Okay, because in that one act, both things happened. Okay, he got rich, I got poor. All right, so you don't need any of this crap. A gives money to B, action. A no longer has money, right, in the one action. Okay, B receives the money from A. Well, that's not a reaction, that's the action. The action was giving the money. There is no, oh, okay, we'll call the same action two different actions. Giving the money was also receiving the money. Those are two different actions. No, they're the same action. You only ever seem to rationalize this. I don't even know why that word is being used. You seem to rationalize this basic fact from the point of view of A. No, I'm saying exactly the point. I'm clearly saying the guy who I ripped my arm off and I handed it to somebody, they have an extra arm. No doubt about it. So where am I looking from point A? Just one perspective. I'm clearly including the other perspective. And then claim there's no reaction in A. I'm claiming there's no reaction in A. The action is getting rid of something. You get rid of it, you have a bias in the opposite direction now because whatever your condition was, it was balanced to your previous condition. And you've changed your previous condition by changing somebody else's condition. Fact. Duh. Okay. The equal and opposite reaction is in the receiving entity, which is just not what Professor Lewin says. So you can keep lying, okay, and keep pretending that's not what the majority of the professors describe it as, an equal and opposite force, as if there's a real force that opposes the other object. There is no real force. There is just you getting rid of your shit. And the rocket is a perfect example. The rocket, there is no opposite reaction that makes the rocket move. There is no opposite force that makes the rocket move. What's making the rocket move is the fact that it has a condition and it's getting rid of all the stuff going one way, and now it still has all the stuff going the other way, which means now it's going to go the other way because it gave away the stuff that was keeping it from going that way. And then the asshole says, yep. So the asshole says to the asshole self, yep. Okay. So probably just both of these are just sock accounts, but whatever. We'll play along. All right. So I've, thoroughly and completely answered this irrelevancy, so I think I'll delete it. So it really doesn't answer any of the paradoxes created by your kinetic energy formula, again. And the fact that you have zero evidence to support it. You still haven't fixed that. Anyway. Alright, so then this idiot, this fucktard, this asshole, whoever the fuck this is, we were on the Got the Funk livecast channel. Who cares? I mean, Got That Funk or whatever, he's from 1926 internet or something. I mean, it's a character I knew, 10 years ago? Barely knew, barely even associated with. It mostly had to do with the battle against the Christians, atheism against Christianity. And he was just, he wasn't even a major player in that controversy, really. He was just one of the, the the multitude of unique, interesting characters on the internet. Defending being a unique, interesting character or something. I mean, there was no big philosophy involved. Anyway, you really don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I really don't know what the fuck you're talking about. First, I hate live broadcast channels, okay? I mean, it's just so much wasted fucking goddamn time. How are you, Jim? What did you do this week, Jim? Hey, blah, 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 blah. It's all a bunch of fucking baby talk, for fuck's sake. 95% of the content is giggling and bullshit. So I don't know why you find that so fascinating. I only watch any of that out of gross desperation. Like there might be some interesting person, okay, on a live cast that you might want to hear making mistakes or doing something stupid. But anyway, that's about it, all it's good for. All right, so Kohevi. So this is Zohar. His name is Kohevi. His name is Zohar, as far as I remember his screen name. But anyway, said he thought this kinetic energy thing was a waste of time. Well, why would you think I would care what Zohar says? I mean, Zohar is what, 15? I mean, Zohar isn't a physicist. Zohar isn't in any way qualified, in my opinion, to make such judgments. So why would this impress the hell out of me? Oh, that's right. I've already argued. I mean, Zohar is defending some notion of counter physics, but I've already pointed out in my own videos that I'm not terribly sure he's paraphrasing any of my physics correctly. I've had to correct him. Not other people. I have had to. I mean, come on. I mean, I've done live question and answer videos with him, whatever. So who cares? He's not my representative, for fuck's sake. That's for certain. You should be able to figure that much out. I don't send Zohar out to go defend my physics because I'm not sure Zohar understands half of it anyway. All right, anyway. Since we've already know that KE equals 1/2 mv squared was proven. So it's ironic that Zohar actually does know how to make a video. So I'm very surprised that he doesn't have the courage or the guts to make the video explaining how it was proven anywhere. I mean, where's the fucking proof? How many fucking times do I have to say, where's the fucking... I mean, one shred of evidence would be nice, let alone some sort of proven. And again, you can't even rely on the Clay experiments because they don't prove 1/2 mv squared. They prove mv squared, which is a number that's going to be by some multiple at least twice as big. Okay, so it's twice a preposterous exaggeration. All right. He wanted to talk about the red and blue force bit theory. Well, the theory that, guess what? The only way you're really ever going to explain magnetism is to recognize that there has to be a yin and a yang involved. That you can't use the same force and create the completely inverse reactions. That if you really go through the process of trying to come up with a physical mechanism that works, a physical one, not virtual photon, not imaginary photon that basically does switch its identity. Somehow it hits the electron knows to run away. Somehow it hits the proton knows to go forward. I mean, the magical theory that conventional physics has. So yeah, that would be a subject worth talking about. If people wanted to talk about the fact that, well, how else can it be modeled? How else can you explain something where the exact same conditions create two exactly opposite reactions? And my argument is the only way you're going to be able to do that is the two things that are oppositely reacting have to be oppositely reacting to two opposite forces. There has to be another thing that has a dual identity. So if you're going to have electrons and protons, you're going to have electron force and proton force. Or you're never going to come up with an answer that's physical. Anyway, and we talked about that for a while. Whoever we is. Anyway, I thought you'd be interested. Well, I'm interested in a non-existent video. So somehow I was supposed to be interested in a live conversation that wasn't announced and that wasn't in any way promoted, or anybody had any idea you were going to talk to Zohar. So you didn't know you were talking to him. The world didn't know you were talking to him, yet I was supposed to be interested, and I was supposed to watch the live broadcast. Oh. Fuck you. Because you're biggest fanboy. So I'm responsible for people who say, I agree with you. That means they automatically have my endorsement. No, they don't. I never gave Zohar permission to be my spokesperson. Okay. Had admitted he thought you were way off. And again, why should I care? I mean, why should I think, whoa, Zohar thinks I'm wrong. I'm scared. Why should that scare me? Okay. With this kinetic energy stuff. I mean, why should it matter to me? Why should it even be relevant to me? Okay, and then this guy says, yeah, saw that, LOL. So you saw something that nobody linked to that isn't on the internet except as a live broadcast. So clearly these people all must be the same person, right? I mean, what's the odds? I mean, I'm just guessing that Got That Funk isn't really soliciting a huge science-oriented audience. I mean, from what I remember, he was just sort of in the whole, he had holes in his ears, pierced hole thing. He was into the whole funk thing. Okay, I guess that's why his name was Got That Funk, because he was doing funky things. Okay, not science things. So, this is obviously... So why don't you post a link, okay? And quit wasting my fucking time telling me about this imaginary conversation in imaginary space somewhere. I mean, you don't understand how this is ludicrous of you to have this expectation that I sit there and just sit here all week, with my internet schedule so I can watch the Got That Funk channel. What the fuck are you talking about? You think if I'm going to watch live channels, I would at least pick ones that are science related, wouldn't you, retard? Fuck. All right. So please post your link. So this is the same asshole who just commented to that asshole's video, right? So these are all Farley, really. Come on, what else is this? All right. So it's just so silly. Sock account responding to sock account responding to the sock account, and here's my own sock account, and this is the other sock account. Anyway, Okay, you seem to ignoring some fairly important points. So you seem to be missing the point that I'm saying. Why don't you answer my fucking questions? So why don't you explain to me how 4 joules of energy go with the gun? The stock of the gun only has 4 joules of energy imposed on the universe that way. And 2,000 joules go out the end, it's probably 4 with a regular sized bullet. But anyway, 2,000 joules of energy go out the other end. And so explain first how that verifies Newton's third law. Sure, that's exactly like Newton's third law. That makes perfectly good sense. So the same explosion created 2,000 joules that way and only 4 joules that way. So just explain that. And then this is done. Just explain to me how that's really great physics, okay? So just explain how that's exactly how the universe works. Yes, it works that way. The explosion created 2,000 joules that way and only 4 that way. That's the way it works. It completely put all the energy in the bullet because it knew that's what it was supposed to do. The gun is really smart. Guns were invented by God, and God was smart. He told the gun, hey, bullets are important. The rest of the gun doesn't matter, so make all of the energy go that way. What the fuck? Anyway, you seem to be confused again about how the K, E, and P formulas. So these aren't formulas in any real sense, right? I mean, MV isn't much of a formula, right? E equals MV, momentum, which is energy. That's not much of a formula. And then to say, well, I'll square it. Okay, I'll square the velocity for fun. That was the original Leibnizian theory. So let's understand, it wasn't for 100 years later that they decided, hey, maybe we ought to fix this because the number seems a little preposterous. Let's put a half in front of it. It's just so stupid. So he says, are not mutually exclusive models. They're complete contradictions of each other. They give completely different answers. You ask 2 plus 2, what does it equal? One says 4, one says 16. It's obviously they're not in any way compatible theories of reality. One of them has to be right and one of them has to be wrong, or they're both wrong, but both of them can't be right. It's impossible. The 8-pound bowling ball can't both knock down twice as many pins and not knock down twice as many pins. Oh, it's just so fucking stupid. Not sure why. Not sure what. They're not mutually exclusive. Not sure why. Okay, you seem to be confused again about the K, E, and P formulas are not mutually exclusive models. Not sure why. Oh, so you're not sure why I'm confused by the fact that you're saying 2,000 is the same as 4. 2,000 equals 4. Okay, I don't think that makes sense. It just has this smell about it, I guess. So I'm sorry you don't understand why I don't think 2,000 equals 4. Because I don't think 2,000 equals 4. It was pointed out to you. Sorry. You just make your declarations with no evidence, and I'm supposed to believe them. We told you so. Why don't you just believe us? It all works out somehow. Yeah, you can believe both things. And everything will go just fine. You'll land on the moon in one piece. No, you won't. Okay, it was pointed out to you that one equation in 2 variables is an undetermined system. So again, you're going to tell me again that because you do a rational equation, that is momentum, and then you do the same equation, without any of the variables given to you. And then you do the same equation with something that's completely made up, and you create a third bastard equation out of that. So you're mating jellyfish with frogs and then telling me this is a rational experiment. No, it isn't rational. All right, undetermined system, you need at least a second equation to fix the solution too. So again, and why would I think that if I connected it to a completely contradictory formula, that contradiction would help get a right answer? So I say 2 plus 2 equals 4. And then I write another equation that says 2 plus 2 equals 16. And then I make those two to come up with what? In my opinion, I'm only going to come up with crap. 2 plus 2 equals 8. Yeah, no, it's not the right answer. All right, which is related to 1, the momentum equation does not give wrong answers. Well, I'm just saying the two equations have a completely different definition of what something does in the universe, what its capacity is. There's no denying it. You'll navigate the spaceship completely differently with one formula and the other formula. Completely different. Fact. So why do you keep doing this bullshit? All right. So I don't know. He can't even label his points. He's got 1. What is this? 1. The momentum equation does not give wrong answers. Worked Newton's cradle. I don't know what that means. It simply doesn't give the final velocities of the balls. Well, of course Newton could do that, though. So you're lying to say that Newton somehow didn't know. Newton would have told you exactly what Professor Lewin tells you. That if you inverse the mass to velocity ratios, that's what you're going to get as an outcome. It's all you have. You change the velocity, then you have to increase the mass. You decrease the mass, you have to increase the velocity to maintain the conservation of the momentum. So, I don't know. What can I say? This is just a lie. To say they didn't know how to apply that fact that momentum is energy. Descartes applied it. He explained to you what certain events will happen when you do certain things. These will be the outcomes. He explained all that, and he did it with momentum. Okay. What it does do is tell you that the sum of the momenta add to a constant. So again, there's no sum of the momenta. I mean, it's really, in my opinion, just fucking retarded to say if I throw something this way and I throw something this way, I have zero momentum. Clearly, these objects have momentum in these directions. It's just retarded. How much energy does this have? How much energy does this have? The energies don't cancel. So that's one of the first problems with your whole perspective, is that you idiots think that energy cancels when it really doesn't cancel. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the energy. The energy's still going somewhere and still will have an impact. It's like when the two clay things hit each other. Obviously, the energy doesn't cancel. The energy is really busy moving a bunch of clay atoms. Okay, and then those clay atoms move atmospheric atoms. It never goes away. The heat, the vibrations, all this stuff, the energy doesn't die, it doesn't disappear, it's still going, just like every other kind of energy keeps going. Alright. It simply doesn't give the final velocities of the balls. So again, but that's just bullshit. What it does is tell us the sum of the momenta add to a constant. There is a big difference between something not giving an answer and something giving wrong answers. So this, again, is just a lie. Clearly, Newton understood momentum to equal energy. Okay, there's no doubt about it. They didn't have the word energy and the word momenta. They called it the quality or quantity of motion. All right, and he certainly knew that it added up, and it added up conservationally. So you're just so full of shit to say they couldn't analyze situations using this understanding. What they didn't fully understand, but they did partially understand. Certainly it's in Leibniz's own writings, okay? The fact that, well, when you don't see the two things that hit each other still moving, it's because the little bits inside the two things are moving. So it was already known that the conservation means you're not talking about the efficiency of a transfer, you're talking about the inefficiency of a transfer, where you didn't actually transfer the momentum from one object to another, you transferred it to a bunch of movement in other directions. Shit, god damn, you people are so full of shit. Alright, you keep forgetting that kinetic energy is, and he puts this in bold, not conserved. I keep forgetting it. I'm saying it doesn't exist. And this argument is exactly the opposite of the argument being made aggressively by the people you said yep to or whatever. They're arguing that kinetic energy is always conserved and it's momentum that's not conserved. It's total energy that's conserved. What's total energy? I mean, this is more baby talk. The 2,000 joules plus the momentum. So I should add 2,002 joules, go out the bullet end. But what are you talking about, the total energy? There's just the amount of energy the things have. You add up all the things that are moving, what's the total energy, retard? There's no other thing going on. There's things moving. You add up the movement times the mass, and you'll get the conservation of movement times mass. That's all there is mass is moving. Idiot. Okay, momentum is always conserved. So he just said, I mean, that's not, I'm just saying the argument is that it's not conserved. Clearly they're arguing now that springs only produce 1.4 the energy. So the momentum is destroyed. You don't get the same momentum. Energy is always conserved. So just more baby talk, but kinetic energy is not. And exactly what does it mean as a mechanical model? I have some kinetic energy. I have a certain number of joules of energy. How do I destroy the joules of energy? If I make heat, I know that takes momentum. All right, I can't make heat without momentum. If I'm boring a cannon, okay, and I'm using a, grinder to grind the cannon. If I don't move the grinder, I can't heat the cannon. There's no heat. The heat always has to come out of something's momentum. If there's friction, there's only friction because I'm trying to move. If I don't move, I can't create friction. I can't create heat. I can't create any of that noise. I can't do any of that crap. And it always has to come out of my momentum. I have to go slower to make noises. I have to go slower to make heat. I can't make anything happen. I can't do any work, okay, without using my momentum. Fuck. All right. 4, comma, related to 3, but more general. So he thinks this is rational, that I am going to sit there and reread the same sentences over and over again to figure out what he's saying. 4 is related to 3, but more general. That's all bullshit. The fact is simple. There was a theory of energy, Newton's theory and Descartes' theory. It was attacked by a religious kook. Then it was attacked by a bunch of free will crystal people. And then some mathematicians decided, well, everybody believes it, so let's contrive math. And there's no physical evidence. You don't even have clay experiments demonstrating this competing argument. And it makes absolutely no sense that the bullet has 2,000 joules and the gun barrel only has 4. It makes no fucking sense. All right. 3 and 4, but more general. You keep making these implications that somehow all these college professors are at odds with each other. No, I'm saying they're all preaching from the same Bible, and they're all doing exactly the same engineered experiments to show one particular phenomenon. So instead of showing us the whole picture, they show us just the part that confirms their horse shit. All right. College professors are at odds with each other as far as this stuff goes. So I don't know where you get this impression. Where did I show the college professor on my side? Oh, that's right, I didn't, because there isn't any on my side. Oh, fuck. As if Lewin has his own version of classical mechanics. So again, you're calling it classical mechanics, which again is just an overt lie. If you're going to say that Newton's mechanics is classical, then this is clearly not Newton's mechanics. It was clearly an attack against Newton. That's the overt history. So you're nothing but a propagandizing, lying sack of shit to sit there and say this is classical mechanics. It is not classical. It's clearly an attack against classical. It's an attack against Galileo, Descartes, and Newton. Clear attack. All right. Physics girl has her version. Well, I mean, clearly she has a version that I don't think Professor Lewin would agree with, frankly, that you can transfer 100% of the momentum and also create heat, noise, sound, deformation, and a bunch of other crap. I don't know if Professor Lewin believes that. Is he really that stupid? He didn't deal with that exact thought experiment, so I guess we can't say. Maybe he is stupid enough to think so. All right, and Piro has his version. Well, clearly Piro's version is in contradiction to Professor Lewin. Professor Lewin says you can't fuck with momentum. It's always got to be conserved. So that's Professor Lewin's assertion, clearly. And clearly Piro's saying, no, momentum can be destroyed all over the place. Kinetic energy is conserved. So those really are two different versions. And the Quora people have their version. Well, no, they don't have any version, frankly. Can you show me a version somewhere in any of the Quora answers? Frankly, I don't see any acknowledgement of the existence of reality for the Quora people at all. They can't even stay anywhere near the subject. Okay, no, all these explanations you're getting from these sources are all explanations of the same thing. So again, more non-answers to the simple question. How do you explain how the gun works? 2,000 joules goes this way, 4 joules goes that way. How do you explain that? You just can't or won't figure out how they fit together. I'm explaining how they completely don't fit together, and you don't have a shred of fucking evidence defending it. Not a shred. I've shown the physical experiments that clearly indicate anyway, that all of what you're saying is absolute bullshit. Okay, that the cart goes this way, the same velocity. No matter what cart I put over here, a brick wall, I put a 10-ton, I put a 4-ton, I put 2 tons, I put a feather. It doesn't matter what I put over here, this goes the same every time. Okay, so whatever. Fuck you, troll. Ugh. Shit. This is just so fucking bleak. Alright, and so, Matter Dirk, who I'm not too sure how fucking idiotic he's going to get, because he just keeps bringing up shit that's off subject, frankly. Would this suffice? Question mark. Dropping the two weights from 10 meters high, 9.8 meters per second for terminal velocity. So that's not terminal. Terminal velocity has nothing to do with something's weight. It has to do with its shape. So the only way you can make relative comparisons between different objects' terminal velocity is to make all the objects of exactly the same chemistry and all of them are a sphere. And then you can have a common formula. But otherwise, the terminal velocity for a feather is 1 millimeter. The terminal velocity for a brick is, whatever, 300 feet. There's no point. Into digital scales. So you have to understand that what a digital scale is doing is averaging a weight. It's not showing you the instantaneous weight. It's showing you the average weight over a period of some seconds. Not going to work. Onto digital scales. So if you're going to get a good answer at all, you have to use a regular scale, and even a regular scale has a counterbalance in it. So ideally you have to use a spring scale, that you weigh fish with or something. Something that doesn't have anything in it to mess up the fact that you're going to get the instantaneous reading, the maximum reading. And you want to see the maximum reading because that's the actual reading. And record the number. So not much detail to that. So anyway, somebody jumped on the terminal velocity thing. Shouldn't have thrown that in. It just serves no purpose. Everything moves with the same speed in gravity, so the velocity isn't relevant. It's only relevant to the fact of the weight and the momentum. So I don't think this is an experiment that's going to prove the point, because I think everybody knows that the twice as heavy object is going to end up, to get 4 times the speed, to twice the speed, you have to move it to 4 times higher. So the whole gravity thing just makes it more complex, unless we all accept those rules and understand those rules. Right, you need to free fall for around 12 seconds in gravity to reach terminal velocity. So you need to, doesn't have anything to do with two weights or whatever they would be, right? So a human being's shape decides what its terminal velocity is. If you change how you're pointed when you're falling, you'll change your terminal velocity. I mean, if you're hitting the air with your flat body, you'll fall faster if you point yourself in the direction that you're moving. If you streamline your shape, you will go faster, so your terminal velocity will be higher. Due to air resistance against the accelerated force, converting distance at around 450 meters. So again, no, that's only true for one profile. So if you're free falling and you do the I'm free falling, with your arms out and you're falling against the wind, that would probably be the true number. If you free fall pointed right at the earth head first going down, then the number will be something like, 570 meters. If you drop two different weights from the same height, they will travel the same speed, and the heavier one will have more momentum by virtue of its mass. All right, so from the same height, two different weights, obviously, yes. So he didn't do half the mass kind of argument. So, yes, it'll be proportional to the amount of mass will be deciding your momentum, because mass is just as important as velocity. Blah, 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 blah. All right, well, I'll leave that up because it's trivial. All right, so I will go to a mindless marbles attempt to pretend that there's no controversy here. So that's obviously the historical record, is to pretend there's no controversy. And I can't understand it for the life of me how anybody with any kind of scientific curiosity is satisfied with 2 + 2 = 4, 2 + 2 = 16. I can't understand how you are satisfied by that ludicrous notion. But whatever. I can't understand why you're all assholes. Frankly. And whose fault is it? I mean, where did all this bad parenting lead to all this fucking society full of liars and cheaters? Yuck. Alright, I think I'll do, before I read Mindless Marbles' comment, I'll just explain what I think physics should be about, okay? Is that some sort of follow the bouncing ball kind of thing. So, I mean, alright, so we have the idea of a gun. So let's say, just for the sake of making it more interesting, let's make the gun, just a tube. And so you put the two bullets facing each other this way. All right. So you have one explosion essentially, right? And you just fire it electrically. Okay. Then it makes, we don't have any problems, right? Because we know it's going to be the same mass here and the same mass here. And what really is happening with the explosion, right? The explosions, we can't control an explosion and tell something to explode only in one direction, right? So when a physical piece of matter explodes, we can't stop it from making little pieces that fly this way and little pieces that fly this way and little pieces fly this way and little pieces fly this way. So there's a symmetry. So we can't make a one-sided explosive. Well, we probably can, but frankly, I don't want to get into that argument. Because so that's the real momentum problem, is when an atom splits, it's like it has to split in two directions, right? I mean, you could sort of understand that if two electrons are close to each other and they move away from each other, it's always going to be in both directions in a sense. The energy is going both ways. So explosions just have that as their thing. They're going to send as much energy this way as they're going to send this way. And so they're little pieces of stuff. So little pieces with a mass and a velocity. So it's very high velocity and very small masses. And they're going to hit stuff. And so then you're going to keep changing these numbers. And then you'll change it to a bigger mass with a more moderate velocity, and then you'll actually end up with, in the end, with a big mass and a little velocity. All right, so you're going to go from little tiny things going really, really fast to a bullet, which is a sort of big thing compared to the chemistry, okay, going pretty slow, okay, but from our scale, it still looks like this. So whether it's a big M and a little velocity or a big velocity and a little M is sort of a perceptual thing. But anyway, but you see it. So this little bit was going really, really fast, a lot of velocity, and so and that's going to convert into something, that has a big mass and less velocity, and so it's all going to. So this is like 50, and the 50 will go to this, and that'll be part of its 270 that it has. 50 will be because it got this from that, and so the movement is just transferred from one object to another object. So there's 2,000 joules of little bits, and some of them are bouncing off the side of the gun, of course. Some, not too many, but some. And the gun's going to get definitely hot here because there's going to be a whole bunch of the explosions going to hit the metal and not be able to move it very far. Just going to heat the metal. But the idea is that 2,000 joules worth will go into, say, the bullet, and 2,000 joules worth will go into this. It's really nothing like that. It's like 5 joules, but whatever. But they'll get the same percentage of the explosion. So the total explosion maybe had 100, and maybe 10 will go here and 10 will go here, and the rest of it's going to get converted into heat and all the other crap that it's going to get, smoke that comes out and all the other crap, the extra bits, the stuff that didn't actually push the bullet. So it depends on how efficient the gun is, how tight this is. All kinds of things will decide how much of the energy is wasted and how much of it actually gets into the bullet. So the percentage could be 50-50 ideally, but it's realistically you're going to be more like 40 and 40 in terms of how much of the energy of the explosion goes into the bullets. All right. So obviously the recoil here would be no recoil, right? I mean, one bullet's going out, one bullet's going out. So I've taken care of all of the symmetry issues, and all of the energy going into the gun would be equal in both directions, so the gun wouldn't do anything except get hot. All right, so what happens in a real gun, a regular gun, is that you only have one side of the explosion moving a bullet, and the other side, okay, so theoretically I can make a zip gun that's just a tube. Okay, and I can have the bullet only go halfway into the gun, let's say. And then I could, again, electronically fire it, so there's no obstacle here. So then half the explosion would just freely fly out this pipe, and the other half would send the bullet on its way. Now, in theory, the bullet goes the same velocity out the other end. It doesn't need anything back here, just like a rocket on Earth doesn't need the ground. The ground's not helping make the rocket go. Okay, it's in the way, actually. That's why they're not putting rockets on pedestals, is to get them away from the ground, because the ground doesn't help any. All right. So the bullet's going to leave with the same, whatever it is, 50, 40, whatever we call it, the energy. And the other energy can go right out the back of the gun, so it's not going to absorb much into the metal, and therefore there's not going to be any recoil, substantial recoil, because you've let all the energy just fly out the back of the gun. So this is sort of like a bazooka. Bazookas work on this kind of principle of leaving this end open, okay, putting your missile in, and then letting your missile fire, and the only real equal and opposite force kind of things you get, is the fact that, yes, some of the energy will hit more on the sides of this because it's not going to bounce back into the bullet kind of thing. And, well, and even that. So you have very little recoil is the point. Shooting a missile out of a open-ended thing. But the fact is, now, if I'm going to aim this, then I'm going to end up having all this recoil hit me right in the face. So most guns have some kind of deflecting device, and most guns use this recoil energy to, put a new bullet in and get rid of, fly the old cartridge out and do lots of work. So they do work with the recoil energy. So the recoil is reduced by anything you can do to make something else happen in terms of forcing the energy in some other direction. But the fact is those mechanisms are going to be like, now you're definitely going to get the reflections. Now you're going to get the recoil of the gun. So as soon as I put something to deflect this energy, the deflection is going to be an absorption substantially. So now I'm going to absorb the energy going this way into the gun by trying to deflect the exhaust. So as soon as I try to deflect the exhaust, I'm now going to get the energy of the exhaust, and now I'm going to have a recoil. So the recoil is never going to really meet. You're not going to get the same energy going this way as you have going that way, realistically. because you're not really creating an efficient mechanism for collecting energy. The bullet is designed to fit right into the pipe, just the right amount. It's designed to collect the energy efficiently, where none of this is designed to collect the energy efficiently. So, you'll only get 30% or something. So anyway, the recoil is never going to be exactly equal to the bullet going the other way, because you aren't necessarily collecting all the energy. All of the momentum in the energy isn't going into the gun barrel. So even when they say these things, they're not absolute rules. Just pointing out theory. They don't give you any theory of how the energy moves at all. All right, so mindless marbles. Spring 1 loaded with initial energy we will impart. So you compress the spring. Object transfers energy to traveling some distance. So we put a weight on it and shoot it. Spring 2 collects energy of the measurement. Then we collect the energy with another spring. Okay, so that one's pretty simple. But the whole idea to show the problem is to say, let's do it with two different masses. Because that's the only way you're going to show the difference between momentum and kinetic energy. Because kinetic energy obviously doesn't say mass and velocity are equal. It's saying velocity is much more important than mass to what your energy is. Somehow if you can make something go faster, you can give it more energy. All right. You can do this experiment, but you're not going to tell you anything new. So again, why would we do that single experiment? Obviously, the whole point was to talk about the inverted mass to velocity ratios to demonstrate why the two theories give completely different explanations of what happens in the universe. All right, both Gary and everyone against him will predict the same outcome here. Right, and that's why it's illustrated by showing two different weights. And the momentum theory is completely coherent in terms of it doesn't create any paradoxes. And the kinetic energy theory automatically creates paradoxes, which is that spring 2 will be compressed just as far as spring 1, right? So the collecting spring will honestly collect the energy. Their whole point, though, is that the spring 1 doesn't honestly convey the energy, so that some portion of the momentum is thrown away, it's lost somehow, because the velocity isn't doubled. All right, was compressed. In the ideal case where energy is not displaced and both springs are the same. So again, he's just saying that we can't tell anything from doing that experiment. We can tell if you take the velocities of the objects, then you can tell which theory is correct and which one's incorrect. So again, you're wrong to say you can't tell anything. But ideally, you'll tell a lot more if you do the two comparisons between two unequal masses. Everyone agrees energy will be conserved. So obviously, it's what we are defining energy as. There's two different definitions of what energy is. So there's no point in having, saying something that's stupid. There's no energy besides either momentum or kinetic energy. There's no energy equals momentum and kinetic energy. That doesn't make any sense. You can't add them. How in some way is real energy different than either momentum or kinetic energy? It can't be both. And everyone agrees that spring 2 will be compressed the same distance as the spring 1 was compressed. Well, that's under some debate now, because how can the spring only deliver 1.4%? 1.4 an amount of velocity and still be giving the full amount of momentum? Can't. Again, assuming the springs are the same. I'm just genuinely curious. Is it not obvious to you? He's talking to Bro, I guess. Do you actually think everyone who disagrees with Gary is promoting free energy? Clearly, the consequence of your formula is free energy. So why didn't you cite the experiment the way the argument is? Okay, the argument is the easiest way to illustrate this is to this works. Yeah, it's good enough for this project. All right, is to compress a spring with an object. Okay, so let's just drop an object with a certain mass onto a spring. Well, let's not do the gravity thing, because that'll just confuse everything. All right, so we take a mass, 1, and we compress a spring with it. So we shoot it into with a velocity of 2. Okay, we shoot it into a spring. Now the momentum says that's 3. 1 times 2 is 2. So, okay. Anyway, so we compress the spring with that. All right, and now we replace the mass with a 2 mass object. Okay, well, let's start with a 2 mass and a 1 velocity. So we're starting with the heavier object. So we push the spring in with the heavy object. We compress the spring a certain amount. All right, and now we just replace the 2, all right, with an object that's inverse. So it's still going to add up to 2 in momentum, but kinetic energy is going to say it's completely different. So now we're going to put a 1m on here, okay? And the theory is it has to leave at 2 velocity, right? Okay, there's no choice because it went in with 2 velocity, with 1 velocity and 2 mass and compressed the spring. Now it has to leave with the same momentum if we're going to conserve momentum, so it has to leave at 2v. Their theory is it only leaves at 1.4v. Okay, that's what Stephen Bro says he can absolutely prove now. Okay, is the 1.4 theory. All right, and momentum is not conserved. Somehow the spring didn't deliver the same energy back to the object. Inversely, if we say it did, okay, the kinetic energy theory holds, and we did actually conserve the momentum, then you've got a problem because now all of a sudden this isn't 2 joules anymore, it's 4. So it's not the same answer. It's 2 times 2 times 1. It's this squared. So it's a different answer. It's a different amount of joules in the universe. So somehow the spring is compressed by a certain number of joules, an amount of pressure, and it gives back more pressure. That can't happen. That shouldn't be happening in the universe described by most physics teachers. So that's the paradox. That's what has to be explained. So either you explain how you can not to conserve momentum, or you have to explain how you can make free energy. Those are your only 2 choices. So it's either a free energy theory, or you believe Newton was wrong. There is no equal and opposite reaction, and there is no conservation of momentum. Okay. So Stephen Bro just BS's through the whole damn thing, blah, 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 blah. Whether he is generally confused or somehow I know I'm talking BS. So yeah, I've invested all this time to talk BS. He thinks that's a realistic theory. I've invested all of this energy. I'm putting real money on the line, willing to pay people to have an argument where they'll show I'm full of BS. I'm trying to have a fight with the most qualified professional possible, right? I'm not going anywhere near midgets or, I'm not trying to take on the weakest argumenter. I'm trying to take on the best fighters they have. Okay, if I could get Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'd pay him. I've offered the money to them. I've offered Sean Carroll, I made the offer, $3,000. He wouldn't even reply. No, I couldn't even get a reply from his people. I'm offering him $3,000. I can't even get a reply from his people. So yeah, I'm full of shit, and I'm looking to get humiliated by, I'm basically just asking for a fight that you're saying I already know I can't win. And you think you have some kind of good scientific mind. You can't even figure out how that's just the silliest kind of speculation in the universe. if people were to bet on your theory. I bet you no one would invest in your theory because it's so fucking stupid as a theory that I would put so much at stake. My whole life's reputation, the meaning of everything I've ever talked about on the internet. I would risk all of that on something I know I'm wrong and I would lose. I mean, it's so fucking stupid. So anyway, so this is what it's all this crap. So he's defending now where he says in the beginning of his video that the red object is half the mass and twice the velocity. And in the end of the video, he's playing my cheat and he's saying, well, no, he's just saying all the experiments except for Gary's experiment, the one he suggested, that one's not moving twice as fast. And all of us were supposed to know that. That's the qualifier. We were all supposed to assume that the same spring, even though Professor Lewin says exactly the opposite, there's no way you can fuck with momentum, that the same force comes out of the spring and you have to double the speed. That's what Professor Lewin overtly has said in the video clips I've played. You can't fuck with momentum. All right? But he's overtly saying that Professor Lewin is wrong. And he's calling it my physics when, no, that's Professor Lewin's physics too. So you're not just taking me on, you're taking all of the physics teachers for all time on. Because I had no reason to believe springs didn't work. You're basically saying you can prove springs don't conserve momentum. Okay, go ahead and prove that. But don't say it's my theory you're disproving, because no, you're proving what they fooled me with. I was fooled also. I believed them when they said springs are reliable. Yeah, I'm believing it because I figured they did enough experiments to prove it. Now, I've seen the experiments where every experiment I've seen, springs don't do the 1.4 thing. They do twice the velocity thing. You're saying it doesn't happen that way. We've been fooled by, the way they presented the experiments. They fooled us. That actually the objects weren't, when they did the experiment with the carts, in the spring, what was really happening is the cart that was say the one mass cart, and I put a one mass cart, and I go away at equal. Okay, now when I put a two mass cart on, this one mass cart isn't going the same speed as it did the first time. It's actually going, let's see, it has to be going faster or slower, because you're going to claim the other cart. So it's actually going 1.4, and because it took more energy to move the heavier cart. Is that what you're going to argue? Well, I have to figure out which way you're going to dispense with it. But anyway, you're saying that the cart doesn't go the same speed each time. Now, even though I did the wooden block thing, and I actually did the, frame by frame, and I can't find any velocity difference. So no matter how many blocks are on this side, I put one block, I put two blocks, I put three blocks, I put four blocks. This side always moved the same speed. So there's a problem with your theory. Okay, you're saying you proved that experiment wrong too. Okay, that's a bold claim, so go ahead and just produce it. But yet he never produces it. See, this is the part that's just so irritating. So what you find out in these comments is, so some douchebag woman asked, what's this song? It's so special. I mean, I love gay music. Anyway, he points out he actually paid to put that crap on the video. He paid money to buy the rights to a crappy song to shove it on the background of a science video. This is so bad. So, and he's already stating, he's always promising, he's planning on doing it again. So he's going to keep doing experiment videos with fucking crappy music in them. Why would anybody rational do that? Why would somebody play music while listening to a Professor Lewin lecture, for example? I mean, what sense can that possibly make to anybody who wants to actually, I mean, if it's classical music, maybe it wouldn't matter much. But I mean, words and shit, I mean, how does that make any sense? Does it? No, it doesn't make any sense. Who would vote for that? What scientific audience would say, yes, please, play more music in the background of science documentaries? We need more music. I can't listen without music. I mean, it's so stupid. Anyway, I'm sorry. It just, So it would be an enhancement if Professor Lewin would have a soundtrack behind his lecture videos. That would enhance the experiments, make them so much more understandable. Just too stupid. So he's always ragging about this money shit, and he seems to just have an infinite amount of money to waste. And then he complains at me because, I don't want to spend my money I don't want my money wasted. Okay. So anyway, and then he has, look, he's even saying something about Zohar here. I complained about Zohar's drawings. Well, I complained because if you're going to represent somebody else's theory, you ought to do it well, not badly. That's part of the argument there. If you're going to speak for someone else, you want to do a good job, like a eulogy or something. You don't want to fuck it up when you're talking about somebody else's life reputation. I'm just saying, if I took on the obligation to stand in for somebody else, I would take that rather seriously, okay, and wouldn't make sloppy mistakes. But anyway, whatever. We obviously live in very different worlds with very different ethical standards of decency. You being in the lying sack of silly shit pile, obviously. Anyway, all right, so it's all trivial bullshit. But he still keeps pretending he's got the experiment. He should show us a clip, but he won't show us a clip, but he's going to show us a clip anytime now. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. Promises, just nothing delivered. And then when he delivers something, it's just going to be a piece of shit. More wasted time on stuff done non-convincingly. More crap to sit there and have to wade through. Noise. More fucking noise. So, that's enough of video. But again, people trying to say there's no controversy here, there's nothing to argue over. I mean, it's a huge difference. 2 plus 2 equals 4, 2 plus 2 equals 16. Huge difference. And it's an important difference because all of their physics is based on similar kinds of mush, stuff they just made up, things that don't have any physical evidence supporting their existence. They just have, the appearance. I mean, again, we're back to the clay experiments. The clay experiments don't even prove the right formula. The formula they changed is the one that the experiment proved. So why did they change it if it was proven by the experiment? If the clay experiment proved that it's mv squared, why did they change it to 1/2 mv squared? Because now their experiment doesn't prove it anymore. Now their experiment is an obstacle to it being the truth. Now the clay experiment doesn't match their answer. You see? In one case, the evidence is convincing evidence and proves the existence. And all of a sudden, no, that's just junk. Okay, because we've changed our mind about what the conclusion is, so we'll just find a new experiment. And unfortunately, they haven't found one yet. Okay, they haven't found a replacement for the clay experiments. So they have 0 experimental evidence. Again, accepting Bro's experimental crap. So if you accept that Stephen Bro is a very good technician and did a very good job of illustrating the truth, fine, okay, but I beg to differ and would argue that his experiments were incredible crap. Okay, and incredible meaning not very credible crap. Okay, so till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. So this has been another Draft Physics video presentation and such.